What makes North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and Arkansas different than the rest of the states in the Union? Well, the answer is whether or not to issue stay-at-home orders. So we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Well, hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and we teach a rising generation to be free. I am so glad you could join me. As always, I'm going to point you to that website, constitutionstudy.com, so you can find everything I'm working on, copies of this and previous articles, videos, audio recordings, where you can ask questions, you can get engaged. You can find my book, constitutionstudy.com/book, to get a deal on the book until it launches May 4th. You have a chance to get it at a discount, and I've been doing pretty good, seeing a few sales. That's always good. It helps keep this project going. It's where you can ask me questions. I love when people ask questions. I've been trying to fit some of them into these episodes. There's just been so much going on lately with the abridgment of freedoms and liberties and rights that has been going on lately. So if you've asked a question and you've asked me to cover a topic and I haven't gotten to it yet, please be patient. I'm trying to. There's just so much news that I have to deal with that I want to get to that's just so time critical. I'm also going to thank everybody that's been sharing the news, sharing what's going on. I've had people trying to get me on radio programs and podcasts, and they're sharing the newsletter, and they're sharing the page with the book. They're sharing this message. Even some of them are even using this to share what they're learning here with friends and family. I really appreciate it. That's really the goal of what we're trying to do here. And it's kind of what keeps me energized, what keeps me going with all of this. So with that, let's talk a little bit about these 5 states. It's actually between 5 and 8. It's been changing lately, but let's find out what's going on with these stay-at-home orders. So it's important to remember that the citizens of each state have created a government for themselves via their own state constitution. Now, each state's constitution is a little different, and it may grant their government different powers in cases of emergency. Now, it is a fundamental principle among free people that to deprive someone of their liberty without due process is not only a violation of their rights, but of the primary purpose of government. The Declaration of Independence reads that to secure these rights, these unalienable rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Now, I have seen stories about governors of these states, quote unquote, endangering their citizens, and even calls for national action. So I wanted to look at the 2 most basic facts that seem to be either, ignored or downplayed in the recent hubbub in the national media. So let's start with a national lockdown. There have been calls for President Trump to issue a national stay-at-home or similar order to prevent the spread of the virus. Now, some people note that legal experts say that President Trump, he doesn't have the authority to issue such an order. Now, they're often comparing him to leaders of countries like Spain, France, or Great Britain. Now, of course, there are tremendous differences between the governments of those countries and that of the United States. See, those countries are just that, individual countries. They have political subdivisions, but they are creations of their national charter. On the other hand, the United States is a creation of the states, and it is granted specific enumerated powers by those states. Put another way, the national governments of Spain, France, and Great Britain created and therefore have power over their territories, their provinces, or their regions. However, since the states created the United States, it is the states that have power over the central government, even if that's not taught in schools today. Now, the Constitution of the United States does not grant the President, Congress, or the judiciary the authority to order people to stay at home. Now, since the federal government is not granted that authority by the Constitution, they are prohibited from doing so by the 10th Amendment, which reads, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." Furthermore, Stay-at-home orders, well, they're a violation of the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause. That reads, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. About the only power I can think of for the federal government to restrict travel is for Congress to suspend interstate commerce. But that's for Congress to do, not the president. Also, it could only limit commerce since the Constitution does not give Congress the power to limit travel, only commerce. And since so much of our day-to-day lives are dependent on products delivered from out of the state, such an order would not only cripple the economy, but probably lead to mass panic, riots, and hoarding of whatever is left. As for state lockdowns, as of the recording of this video, approximately 30 states have issued some sort of stay-at-home or shelter-in-place order. Now, while I have not researched the orders or the constitutions of all these states, I do see one very important problem with them. They violate both the Fifth Amendment, which I've previously quoted, and the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The 14th Amendment includes, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Since these orders deprive you of your liberty without cause, trial, or even the pretense of protecting your rights, there is no due process. I'm sure lawyers and judges will claim that the government has a compelling interest in keeping people safe from the virus. First of all, the purpose of government is to protect your rights, not keep you safe. Remember the Declaration of Independence? Second, if the government can decide whether or not it will protect your rights, then they are not unalienable rights. In effect, you have no right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, only the opportunity to beg the government to let you have them. And if the government can decide not to protect your rights because of a pandemic, what other emergencies will they discover that they can use for the same purpose? So when I read an article about governors refusing to bow to pressure to infringe on the rights of their citizens, well, it makes me very happy. Now, I hope the citizens of these states will contact their governors with words of support and encouragement. Most of all, I hope they will stand up if someone in the federal government gets the idea in their head that they can force states to comply with the federal's wishes. Now, I'm sure by now, some of you out there are yelling at your computer something along the lines of, but Paul, what are we to do? We have to do something to stop the spread of the virus. We have to do something. And I agree. But the answer is not more tyranny from government officials, but for all Americans to grow up and start acting like adults. You see, it's one thing for government officials to provide evidence, statistics, and guidance, but it's quite another for them to issue illegal orders or exercise powers not delegated to them. There are thousands of stories, and probably millions more untold, of people doing the right thing for themselves. People, because of their situation, sheltering in place. Others who are concerned they may have been exposed to the virus, voluntarily avoiding gathering with others. Voluntary quarantining. Even more are out and about observing social distancing recommendations and in many cases using their freedom to help others with deliveries of food, medicine, or just comfort. Have some of those people gotten sick? Probably. But that is a consequence of their own decision, and I honor them for it. In the meantime, if you're waiting for someone in government to tell you what is best for you, then you're not a citizen. You're a subject. If those we hire to act in our name can dictate how we should live our lives, well, then they are not the public servants they claim to be. They are our rulers. And when they can subject us to laws and restrictions while exempting themselves, they have become the very aristocracy, the very form of tyranny we declared independence from 244 years ago. Furthermore, this one-size-fits-all mentality, well, it's corrosive to the republic our founding fathers formed. What is best for New York is almost certainly not what is best for South Dakota. What works best in California is most likely not what's going to work best in Texas. Even within states, what is best for New York City, Boston, or Los Angeles would be destructive to the rural areas that make up the vast majority of the landmass of the states of New York, Massachusetts, and California. You see, by treating the entire country as if it were a major urban area, we have not only crippled the economy, but our ability to rise to the occasion and defeat this virus as well. Does that mean that some will get sick or even die? Yes, but people are dying already. Would more die than if we obeyed our leaders like sheep? Well, no one can truly know for sure. The question is, what are you willing to give up for the promise of safety, well, that can never truly be delivered? Now, there are lessons to be learned from this pandemic and the reaction to it. First, given any opportunity, there are those, especially in government, who will take power not delegated to them. History has shown that when a power is taken, it is rarely returned without a fight. If we love liberty, we must resist the taking of power and prepare ourselves to fight for the return of what we've already lost. Second, this pandemic, and especially our reaction to it, shows just how badly our education system, both formal and social, have failed to create a people prepared to live free. We live our lives like freedom and liberty are the normal state of affairs, like we've always had them and always will. Well, history has shown the exact opposite. Freedom and liberty are not the norm. Just as order devolves to chaos or systems decay without maintenance, liberty devolves into tyranny without the active participation of those who live in it. As Ronald Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We did not pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like to live in the United States where men were free. Now, whether it is true that the majority of the nation seems willing to be ruled by their state houses in Washington, D.C., or if it's merely an illusion created by those who just wish it were so, we who love liberty should learn that we will not be taught what those in power do not want us to learn unless we find it for ourselves. Instead of being trained to be subjects, we must learn to live free. Last, but certainly not least, this pandemic should be a wake-up call for many of us. We not only need to be prepared to take care of ourselves, but we need to be willing to suffer the consequences of doing so. Whether it's the pastor arrested for holding worship services, the neighbor threatening to turn you into the police, or the possibility that you might get sick, if we will not stand on our own 2 feet, we do not deserve the liberties we claim. We must decide for ourselves whether we will live as a free people or as serfs. Now, since nothing is free, we will either pay with the consequences of our decisions or with our liberty. The choice is yours. But before you hand over those precious liberties you inherited from your forefathers, remember what Benjamin Franklin said. They who would give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty nor security. So what do you think? Do you see people just giving up on their liberty? Do you see governments taking this opportunity to assume power, not letting a good crisis go to waste? The question is not what's government going to do, it is what are we the people going to do? Are we going to stand up for our rights? Are we going to defend ourselves? Are we going to act like adults and take responsibility for our actions? Or do we want to be taken care of? Do we want to be serfs? Do we want someone else to make the decisions? Do we want someone else to take responsibility? That's the question at hand. Through this nation's history, there have been many times when people had to stand up and make difficult decisions and suffered terrible consequences. But Americans did. Now in 2020, the question is, will the American people still stand? Will they stand their ground? Will they hold on to their liberties? Or will they crumble and fold like a cheap suit and let those we've hired to govern become not only our servants, but become our leaders, our rulers, in effect, our owners? Think about that. Send me some comments. Head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. Let me know what you think. Are there other examples that you can think of where governors in at least a few states are standing up to this madness that's been running around lately? Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. COVID-19 is a serious situation. The question is, are we willing to throw out our liberty for the promise of being kept safe? And if that got your attention, if that was worth your time, hopefully I'll see you the next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from